Hey everyone, I am Joe Gordon-Levitt, and happy Earth Day. I hope you and your families are all having a great day today and are able to take a moment to think about our planet, our home that we share together and that we share with our kids and our grandkids and great-great-grandkids on in the future. I'm very grateful to be celebrating Earth Day today by having a conversation with someone I personally admire quite a lot. He is the representative from California and actually my own hometown of Los Angeles, Congressman Adam Schiff. Mr. Schiff, thanks for being here.
Joe, it's great to see you again, and happy Earth Day, everybody.
So, Mr. Schiff, for all you watching, this is one of the strongest advocates that we have in our government for protecting our environment. He's an original co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. I'm sure we'll talk about that more in a second. But today's Earth Day, so you ready to talk about our planet?
I am ready.
Okay.
The conversation is long overdue with everybody.
Yeah, right. Okay, so here's my first question. I think we all know that, nowadays, anytime you say climate crisis or the environment or anything like that, it's going to stir up a lot of disagreement, right? And there's some people who are really concerned about the damage being done to our natural environment. And then there are also a lot of people who feel like those concerns are overblown and it's more of a politically motivated fiction, really. So here's my question. Today on Earth Day, can you, Mr. Schiff, can you tell us about a few of your very specific concerns with what's going on with our natural environment? And can you tell us, how do you know that those concerns are really, really true and not just some opinion?
Yeah, I mean, great questions. And I guess what concerns me the most is that we are so very close, and some would say we've already crossed a tipping point where the changes in climate will be irreversible. And that terrifies me because we see the summers getting hotter and hotter. We see wildfires with increasing severity and shortages of water. The impacts are already really serious, and they could get much, much worse. So I'm, deeply concerned about it. I chair the Intelligence Committee. I also see how resource scarcity causes nations to conflict with each other. In some of the, resource poorest places like Yemen, it's fertile soil for not growing crops, but growing conflict and war. So deeply concerned about all these things. How do we know what's really happening? Because we can see, the hottest temperatures on record, places in the Palm Desert getting to be 140 degrees, temperatures we haven't seen in a century or maybe never. And we see that all around the globe. We see sea levels rising, we see glaciers melting away. The evidence is really irrefutable. But finally getting to where you started the conversation, Joe, how do you get people's attention about this without driving them away or driving them into their separate camps? I think one way to start the conversation is, you go to the pump right now and gasoline is through the roof. It's impacting everyone. Wouldn't you love to not have to deal with high gas prices anymore? Wouldn't you like to not see these dictators, whether they're in Russia or Saudi Arabia or Venezuela, have such a billy club they can use because what they have under their soil is worth all this money? The only way to do that is by investing in renewable energy, so we don't need those fossil fuels anymore. It takes the swagger away from these dictatorships. It also helps us clean the air. And it means that we never have to deal with the kind of extortion at the pump that we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. So you're almost, it sounds to me saying like, regardless of whether you believe there's a climate crisis, et cetera, that the economics of it actually makes sense to invest in renewable energy, and the economic message is just as worth focusing on.
Yes, and look, there are some people who you're just not going to reach talking about concerns for the planet.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to reach them on moral, ethical grounds in terms of climate change and what we're doing to the next generation. So, you hit people where they live in any way you can. And where a lot of people living right now is they're having a hard time getting by.
Right.
Because, oil companies can jack up the price during times of scarcity or instability. And because, we're cutting off oil from Putin's Russia right now because they're murdering innocent people in Ukraine.
Mhm.
Well, there's one way to permanently deprive Russia of the resources to make war like this. And that's by making sure that they don't have billions and billions to spend because of their oil wealth.
So when it comes to the economics of it, though, I guess some people get really concerned about addressing climate change because of the economics, because they're afraid that that'll harm their livelihood, take away their job if they work in an auto industry or in the energy industry, et cetera. What do you say to those kinds of concerns?
I'd say that the much bigger job growth is in the green economy, and you see whatever nation leads that energy revolution is going to have enormous dividends. And right now, it sadly looks like that's going to be China. And there's no reason why China should lead the energy revolution and drive all that benefit. That ought to be done here. We led the revolution in telecommunications, and as a result, we got a lot of benefit from that economically in the United States. We're going to move ultimately away from fossil fuels. The only question is, how long is it going to take? Are we still going to have a planet left when we do? And what nation is going to drive the benefit the most? I want that to be the United States of America.
There you go. Okay, so you're talking about a future, which is one of the other things I wanted to ask you about. My next question is, because I love trying to imagine the future. It's like in a sci-fi nerd kind of way. I just love thinking about it. And when it comes to the environment, imagining the future can be scary, but it also can be really positive depending on how you think about it. So I'm curious to ask you, what do you imagine when you think of our future? And I'm actually curious to get two kind of images from you, the good future and the bad future. The bad future where we blew it and we let this environmental crisis get away from us. Like, I'm curious to hear what that bad future looks like in your mind. And then the good future where the human race kind of figured it out and addressed these challenges. What does that future look like in your mind?
Yeah, a great question. Well, I'm kind of a science fiction nerd like you are, and so the bad future looks a lot like Dune,
Right.
or if you're an old guy like me, like a lot of those planets on the original Star Trek. But I mean, the bad vision of the future is one where conflict is just rife around the world because everyone is competing for scarcity of water and other resources. Temperatures are boiling, places are becoming uninhabitable, and food is scarce. That's the kind of future we're looking at down the road if we don't tackle this problem.
Yeah.
So what does the alternate future look like? Look, I'm an optimist. Part of the reason I'm an optimist is that, the segment of our population that cares the most about the planet are young people. And one day they're going to be running this place. And that day's not that far off. And if young people actually were more engaged in the political process, they'd be running the place now. But the future I see is a future where young people make the earth a priority, where we invest in those renewable sources of energy, where we get away from polluting the environment, where we clean up our oceans, we clean up these islands of plastic you see that are now becoming as large as continents, and where we have a restoration of endangered species. And that's the kind of future that I envision. And I believe that's the kind of future we're going to have. But it really is important that my generation hand off the planet to the next while it still can be saved. And we're just not doing much of a job in that department.
Do you think it still can be saved now? Are we not past the point of no return?
I do, absolutely. And, one of the things that concerned me about, you probably saw that United Nations report that came out a few months ago, concluding that, well, we may have already crossed the tipping point.
Yeah, I remember when that was.
It certainly got your attention on the one hand, but, you don't want to discourage people with the idea, okay, it's all hopeless now. It isn't hopeless. I still believe this is a very solvable problem. We have a lot of brilliant people, a lot of brilliant scientists. And we have the means. This is the thing. We have the means to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. We have the technological ability. just in my lifetime, indeed, in the last 20 years, we have seen the price point, that is, what does it cost to turn the sun into energy, drop below the cost of extraction of fossil fuels. And so the market should be helping lead the way. Now, we've got these artificial incentives for the oil industry, tax incentives for the oil industry, which is crazy. They're making money hand over fist. They don't need tax benefits. And what's more, we shouldn't be incentivizing, the industries that are killing the planet. But we can do this, and we can not only, I think, solve the energy crisis and put the solution on track in terms of climate, but we have the technological ability to feed the whole world. Nobody needs to go hungry in this world anymore.
Yeah, I ever since becoming a dad and just getting the immense satisfaction every day of just watching my kids eat, it's all the more sad to know that there are kids out there that don't get to eat as much as they want. And I love that you said that we have the ability to feed the whole world, and it's something that we should do. Well, you mentioned a lot of things that we could do to get us on the right track to that good future. But who's we, and how can just somebody who's watching this, how can I, someone who's not a U.S. representative like you, what can we do to actually contribute to getting us on track?
Yeah, great question. And I always come back to something that our speaker likes to tell us when we meet as a caucus, and that is know your own power. It's true of members of Congress, but it's true of everyone. Everyone has the ability to influence circumstances around them. And it may be in a small way or with a small circle, or maybe with a larger circle. I remember, and I understand you'll be one of my new Pasadena constituents. I remember, visiting with some of my young teenage constituents in Pasadena some years ago. This was during the genocide in Darfur. They didn't just sit idly agonizing, well, there's nothing I can do about it. No, they actually decided to do something about it. They formed a babysitting ring club where they would tell the parents that whatever they paid in babysitting fees would go to help feed kids in Darfur. And if they wanted to write an extra check on top of what they were paying for their babysitting, they could do that. Well, they raised about $4,000 or $5,000 for relief efforts in Darfur. And if a group
That's
of
awesome.
teenagers can do it, then anybody can do it. And so, in my own family, apart from what I'm trying to do in Congress, my wife and I both drive electric cars. We're both vegan. Through something just as simple as diet, we feel like we're making a contribution to the planet. The way we eat is very polluting and inefficient in terms of our resources and the environment. But in steps large and small, we all can make our own contribution.
I know that the midterm elections are coming up, and I don't want to say anything partisan, but how much do you think that voting can actually make a difference to these issues we're talking about with the environment?
A huge difference. We were 2 votes away from passing in the Senate a bill we passed in the House, which would have been the most massive investment in attacking climate in the nation's history. Hundreds of billions of dollars to attack climate change.
This is the infrastructure bill?
This was the Build Back Better bill.
Yeah.
And it would have been just extraordinary. And, we were short 2 votes.
Right.
Flip 2 seats in the Senate, and you have suddenly a massive investment in attacking the problem of climate change. And a lot of those Senate races, like a lot of House races, they're decided by a handful of votes. And so, yes, being involved, being active politically makes a huge difference. As I was saying a bit ago, young people could be the largest, most powerful demographic right now.
How can they do it?
Just by voting, just by turning out. You know who votes? Old people vote.
Right.
Old people vote. And old people don't have the same priorities as young people, not all of them.
Right.
For old people, the priority is things like Medicare and Social Security, and those things are super important, and they get a lot of attention, and they got a lot of resources, as they should. If young people turned out, the planet would get a lot of resources. We wouldn't have runaway student debt because we would be helping students pay for college. And we would be bringing down tuition and fees at state universities. So, it's as simple as making their voice heard at the ballot box.
And even though the elections aren't for a number of months now, are there things that people, especially young people, can do to impact that outcome that we get in November?
Absolutely. And one of the most important is, one of America's two great political parties right now is using a big lie about the last presidential election to usher in a new generation of Jim Crow laws meant to make it difficult for people of color to vote, which is scandalous and awful. It's a retreat back into a dark period in our history. But a lot of these laws have passed in different states, thankfully not in our state of California, but they have made it harder for people to vote. And so people can get involved, and you can get involved in person or online with a number of organizations that are helping people overcome these new obstacles to voting, particularly in communities of color. So, that's one very important way people can get involved and make sure that every vote is cast and every vote is counted.
Well, I really appreciate it, Mr. Schiff. And it sounds to me like what I'm taking away is today on Earth Day, if we really want to help protect our planet, we can get involved in American democracy. And we have these midterms coming up, and the outcome of what happens in November is going to really matter a lot for the future of our natural environment and our planet. So thank you for all the light you're shining on all these issues. It's been really great talking to you today.
Well, and Joe, thank you. I am privileged to represent Hollywood and a lot of wonderful and successful and talented creative people. Not all of them get involved in trying to save the planet. Not all of them get involved in trying to save our democracy. You are, because of your talent, one of the busiest of my constituents in the industry, and yet you make the time consistently year after year after year. I've seen you many, many times over the years devoting yourself to the greater good, and I just want to thank you for it.
That really means a great deal to me, Mr. Schiff. Thank you for saying so. All right, everybody. Happy Earth Day. See you next time.
Happy Earth Day.